into the next pathway, the feelings. The feelings aren't acceptable, move into behaviors. Once we get down to behaviors, then there's a triangle. And on either side of that triangle is anger and depression. Now, I almost didn't bring handouts because I wanted you to actually draw this along with me because it helps you to remember it better, but I want to make sure you have it. When you become suppressed down to the level of behaviors, you have no other option. Your only two options when you get suppressed to the level of behavior is anger and depression. Those are that's like your final, that's the final countdown, is when you get to behaviors. Because all you can do from that point is become angry or become depressed. And then you vacillate between those two. And this is the level of stress, it's the level of fear, and if those two experiences, stress and fear, last long enough, they become trauma. Trauma is the experience of stress which is prolonged, overwhelming, or unpredictable. If a child cannot express through their attitudes or feelings, and then they come all the way down to their behaviors where their only options are anger and depression, and they stay in this experience of stress and fear long enough, it becomes trauma. This becomes a conditioned level. That's important to understand. This becomes conditioning. This becomes as automatic as brushing your teeth in the morning, as putting on your socks, as getting dressed. It's automatic. It's like there's no option. Once you get to this level of conditioning, it becomes a conditioned experience. Not only does it become a conditioned experience, but parental reactions to this become conditioned too. So you are essentially being locked in a state of autopilot with your child's now negative behavior. So there is very little consciousness occurring at this level. Your child jumps, you scream. Your child pushes, you dance. It's just automatic. It becomes conditioned. And this can be very hard, very difficult to interrupt. This is where you get diagnosis. This is where you get medication. This is where you get residential treatment centers. This is where you get years of therapy. All of that exists on the level of behavioral expression. That's where all that occurs. So we go back to what Ruthie is saying. Well, how do you deal with these attitudes? The first thing we have to realize is that we were raised from a place of fear that says attitudes are not okay. That attitudes are actually something that aren't to be tolerated. That attitudes are a reflection of disobedience. Attitudes are a reflection of disrespect. Attitudes are a reflection of a child who is being willfully defiant and manipulative and disobedient and all that business. So the moment we sense an attitude from our child, it immediately triggers a level of fear within us. And I'm going to show you where this exists in the brain, because it triggers fear and stress in your brain. So the moment it triggers fear and stress in your brain is set up to see threat. All right, anger, and this is why anger is not a primary emotion. Anger is a secondary emotion to fear. When you sense an attitude and you've got negative conditioning, as we all do, then your brain sees the attitude and senses it as a threat. Now, what the brain wants to do when it sees threat is eliminate it or run away from it. See, that's what the brain's wired to do. So you want to get rid of the threat. You want to remove the threat. Now, because we've been conditioned to believe that attitude is a threat, the first thing we want to do is get rid of the attitude. Because in our opinion, by getting rid of the attitude, we can create peace and harmony in our family. Now, the paradox to that is because we are operating out of fear, to get rid of the attitude, we end up using fear. The attitude is driven by stress. When we use fear, which is also interconnected to stress, when we use fear to get rid of an attitude that's driven by stress, we only end up creating more stress, hence more fear. So the first thing we have to do is begin seeing, number one, that attitudes cause us stress and fear as a parent. That's the first thing we have to do. The second thing we have to do as a parent, when we realize that an attitude causes us stress and fear, we have to come to the understanding that it's not that scary. It's not that stressful. It's not the end of the world. This is not life or death. It's an attitude. And if you can hold on to the understanding that I gave you, that an attitude is essential for making an adjustment, for making a transition, then all of a sudden, not only is an attitude not scary and threatening, an attitude becomes okay. And the moment an attitude becomes okay, the moment an attitude is understood, the less the attitude has to show up.
To the alarm clock explanation.
The alarm clock? Tell me now. What? Remind me.
As adults, if the alarm clock goes off, you have to have an attitude and then express the emotion.
Oh yeah, okay. Just like and this is how natural attitudes are. In the morning, when your alarm clock goes off on Monday morning, how many of you, when you hear that alarm clock go bam, 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 how many of you jump up and say, "Thank you, alarm clock! Thank you, thank you!" We don't, do we? Instead, we hear bam, 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 and we go whap! And then we go back to sleep for a minute. And then it comes on again. And we go whap again. And we hit snooze a couple times. And then we stretch up. We throw our legs over the edge of the bed. We look at the clock. See, what are we doing? We're having attitude. And we're making an adjustment. And we stand up. Right? All of that is an adjustment. What if, as soon as that alarm clock went on, someone popped in your room and said, "All right, get up, it's a great day. Chipper, chipper, chipper. Come on, move it, move it, move it." You'd be in jail, wouldn't you? Assault and battery. Right? Can you imagine? But we do the same thing when we ask our children to get up and do anything. When we ask them to get up and do anything, it's this exact same dynamic.